The soul is invisible, right? Everybody knows in every faith it's invisible. How can you guys treat something which is invisible? So here we are. My name is Tariq. I have with me Mr. Shujauddin Inamdar, and I have Zulekha, Shakoor, Rajani. It is all impromptu. We have not decided anything. We thought, okay, let's have a discussion about Islamic psychology today. How this came into form, it's a interesting story in itself. So my first, I'll directly delve into it. My first question to Shuja is, what is Islamic psychology? How is it different from the Western psychology?
So, when we talk about Islamic psychology, or when we try to understand human psyche from an Islamic perspective, to put it more elaboratively, so it happens that if you see that in the Western academia, in the Western psychology, psychology as of now is defined according to APA is the study of human behavior and mental processes. But initially, the whole study was the study of the soul. Then, due to different perspective that emerged, and finally now it is the Western academia is seeing psychology as more a study of mental processes and of human behavior. Then the whole in academia there started a movement called decolonial movement, where the very Eurocentric understanding of knowledge of all these social sciences or sciences, it was questioned, it was critiqued, that the epistemic or the knowledge sources, the way we are understanding knowledge needs to be questioned. And with colonialism, like we see that the European countries colonized all the nations. So after we see that they have decolonized or they went back, but it wasn't for the intellect, it wasn't for the academia. It happened thus that our knowledge system, our understanding of reality was still through that colonized lens, where we are seeing the human psyche from the same way as the European theorist has envisioned. So with this decolonial movement, various indigenous psychology came to emerge, where the understanding of human behavior and human self itself has to be envisioned from a very different civilizational point of views, cultural point of views, and basically indigenous perspective. In that, we find the whole discussion in APA came about of spiritual and religious psychology. So that is the whole transition of how first the acceptance of a different altogether paradigm of seeing human self emerge, and in that emerged the discussion around Islamic perspective. So there is a Christian perspective, there is a Hinduistic perspective, or there is a Eastern perspective. So every cultural and civilization has their own perspective there. So that's when the emergence of Islamic psychology happened, with Malik Badri at its forefront, considered as the father of the modern Islamic psychology. So Islamic psychology, before the pre-modern era, there was the whole discussion in Islam regarding ilmun nafs or taskiyatun nafs, the purification of the self. And these topics are very much embedded into the whole theological position of Quran and Sunnah. So now when this whole revivalist movement and seeing the whole knowledge from an Islamic paradigm started, Malik Badri took the charge on psychology, that the whole Western perspective of seeing the whole field of psychology was critiqued at multiple levels. So he primarily started with the theorization, how the personality, how the human self has been theorized, coming from himself from a very clinical and behaviorist learning he had for himself. He critiqued behaviorism, psychodynamics of Freud. So we need to understand that Malik Badri was in his 1970s when this whole discussion is coming.
Is he still alive?
No, he passed away in 2021 in February 20. Yeah, so he passed away. So that's where the whole criticism started, that Malik Badri critiqued the very fundamental of the assumptions of the human behavior And then he criticized not just the theorization but also the application of those principles. So it impacted the education field, it impacted the psychotherapy, and that's where the whole discussion becomes relevant to us as well. That how the mental health services is also being criticized from that perspective. So this was the work of Malik Badri, and then from there his students took the whole field further. And now when we'll be discussing the various trends in the field and how it came to India, and that will be the future discourse that will be. So in brevity, if we can say, Islamic psychology is to see the human self from Islamic paradigm, Quran, Sunnah, and traditional Islamic heritage and knowledge.
One very pertinent question here, my audience would be also having it. Does it apply to only one faith, that is Muslims, or we can apply this for all faiths? I want you to be very, very clear about this concept, whether it's applicable to all human beings.
So that is it. So if it is coming from an Islamic perspective, so Islam is not a religion of Muslims. That is a very fundamental principle that we have there. It is a religion of whole humanity. And Muslim is not a race, it's not an ethnic group, and in any of the ways it's not like. So the principles, the fundamental worldview through which we are seeing the reality, it is for the whole human. So if Islam is for universal, for all human, the principles and the application of Islamic psychology will be for humanity, not just for Muslim per se.
Okay. So, but is there a evidence backing up how we have evidence backing up the Western psychology? Is there any evidence?
Yeah, so basically in all the pre-modern times where there were maristans, where there were maristans are basically hospitals that are attending to the mental health issues at that time. So people were coming, so in Persia, in different places, Iraq. So there were so now in current time it is Iraq. So basically people coming from all over the globe to get healed or to get treated. So it wasn't very much, you can say, that much how much categorization or sectarian that what we see now in the whole mental health services. It wasn't there at that moment. So people from around the globe, irrespective of a religious or cultural perspective, were to avail all these services. So that fundamental idea of humanity and universality of Islam, or of seeing the human self, needs to be brought back into the understanding and in application.
Okay. So my first question to Zulekha: what are the differences, major differences between Western psychology and Islamic psychology? Do you, in the first place, feel it's different?
Of course, I think to begin with, it is definitely different. In very simple terms, for people or the audience who wants to understand this in very simple terms, is that psychology actually started off with the study of soul, right? Psyche actually meant the soul and logy meant the study. But eventually we did see that, the entire 19th century and the church and the judiciary and all of that getting separate, we saw that the entire field became very secular. I think that's exactly what Dr. Malik Badri targeted, saying that the field has become way too secular for Muslim psychologists to practice, because it's not catering to the tamir, the construction of the human being, right? When we're talking about the study of the soul, and if the soul is never mentioned, you're not catering to the soul, and you're only validating the clients and just making them feel good about what they're going through, it doesn't cater to the very purpose of where the entire thing is coming from, right? So in Islamic psychology, we see a construct. A lot of, it's coming from the Quran, it's coming from the scripture. We see that there are different components to the human being. There is a soul, which is ruh. There is a psyche, the nafs, or what TIP modality calls as a behavioral inclination, right? Which could actually take you sometimes towards very malakuti drives, very angelic and philanthropic drives. And sometimes it could also be that it takes you towards very hedonistic, very, that the child who wants to, just wants something, irrespective of knowing whether it's right or wrong for the child. So you have the drives, you have the nafs, you have the akal, the cognition, right? And you have, last but not the least, the ihsas, the emotional faculty. And all of its various manifestations you see in the qalb, in the heart. So the maraid al-qalb, when we talk about the diseases of the heart, these are all constructs that are not there in the Western psychology. So first and foremost, I think Western psychology does not address the ruh, the soul, and whether you travel around the world, there is a reality to the soul. What happens when the person dies? There's something that leaves the body when the person dies. This person was walking, talking, eating, sleeping, and doing everything in our back. What happens when the person dies? There is a universal reality and understanding that there is a soul. Then how do we not talk about it? When we say body has a need, when we talk about, say, intellectual stimulation, right? When we say that akal, the cognition has needs, right? You want to read, you want to learn, you want to produce a body of knowledge, right? When your akal has a need, when your body has a need, emotional faculty to feel safe, how do we completely ignore the fact that the soul can also have a need? And how do we completely forget one part of human body or one aspect of human body, right? So that's first thing. I think second thing could also be the way it does not address some of the most important things. Western psychology is a lot about validating. It's a lot about making the person feel good, the feel good factor. But I think what Islamic psychology, or I think, spiritual psychology, they map the person's virtues and vices. So here, if you do not have virtues, you're going to be seen as sick. The very definition of sickness is different in Western psychology and Islamic psychology. If you have maraid al-qalb, or say the disease of the heart to be translated, you are termed as sick and you definitely need help. You need a rafiq or a rafika, you need a close person mentoring you, you need a sheikh, you need a teacher. And in today's modern context and understanding, you need somebody who's coming, practicing psychology from an Islamic perspective. But otherwise, it was it was something very classically done by sheikhs and shuyukhs, with teachers or very close pious friends. Like what Abu Bakr Siddiq was to Prophet. It was Sahaba, the companion of the Prophet, what he was to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Something like a Rafiq concept. But here you see, when you map it, there's no concept of, vices. There's no concept of. So if you are being very, say, blunt and shady, it's seen as you being street smart, right? It's being appreciated. Whereas truthfulness, honesty, these are things that always has been celebrated across scriptures, across cultures, and across religion. So in spiritual psychology, you will map the person to be healthy only when the person is healthy in terms of these character strengths and virtues. Unlike in Western psychology, you will diagnose the person. How do we describe if a person is well and ill is functionality. If you are functional and you have all the diseases of the heart, you're still well, right? But that's completely opposite. So I think these are two differences, but of course there are quite a few.
Okay, so I think it becomes very imperative for us to basically first understand when did it start, where did it start, and then we can come back to India and who are the pioneers of Islamic psychology in India.
Yes.
So would you be possible for you to kind of...
Yes, I think, and of course you can also add in, I think Dr. Malik Badri, I think it starts with IOK movement. That's where we need to start. You want to talk about that, and then I'll come to...
So basically, in the previous question itself, when defining the Islamic psychology itself, we discussed about the worldview of Islam and paradigm of Islam, how Islam sees the reality. So this movement started back by the whole revivalist movements that started towards knowledge, that how even the knowledge, like decolonial movement that we have discussed. So when decolonial was not just a Muslim or Islamic project, it was a very universal phenomena that was happening when the imperialism started to diminish, or when all the European countries and after World War II, everything was into nation states, and it was in a way that the power came to an end. But that intellectual hegemony, that what is truth and what is not, that was the very fundamental point of knowledge that was critiqued by all the decolonial movement. Like Western epistemic position, or the knowledge position of seeing reality only with the five senses as true, and only the reason, how they have conceptualized reason by Descartes, by Locke, and all those philosophers. So in a way, that enlightenment, we can say, these are all colonial words that it has been pushed on to us, that this is the reality that you have to accept through our education. So all these movements first critique the very fundamental of the position, that they also have the assumptions there. So the modern Western whole paradigm is based on three major saints, what they call as saints: Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, and Darwin. So all of them contributed to different aspect of knowledge. Where Karl Marx was given a materialistic explanation to the whole society and politics, Sigmund Freud was the one who gave a whole explanation to the human psyche, and Darwin initially was a theist, but his theorization was taken by the whole atheistic understanding. So all the sciences, now even in psychology we have evolutionary psychology is there. So we'll see that this whole paradigm that was there, why psychology has to be only read by the psychology is defined by Western theorist. That was the fundamental question. Why, if I am reading any Indian psychologist, I have to call it Indian psychology? Why, if I am reading like Ibn Khaldun or Razi or any other Imam Ghazali, why it has to be an Islamic psychologist? Why psychology can't be just a field where there could be multiple perspectives to psychology? So that is a fundamental question this whole movement started. That why, when psychology is being discussed, why it has to be read only Freud? So this is intellectual hegemony that Western paradigm has been. So they have their own assumptions and implication. So this is what Malik Badri and before them people were critiquing. Nijatullah and other were also there that were critiquing the whole paradigm in this way, that how you are conceptualizing human is not applicable to different cultures or different civilization. So their needs are not being met.
No, but when they critique, did they also come with an alternative
paradigm? Yes. So that is what the alternative paradigm is, what they have suggested, that every civilization will have their own perspective, and paradigm was existing. It was the arrogance of Western theorists that we are the subject and we will see everything as object there. They are object for us. And that's when they said that nothing before us really mattered. So they even give any references to any other civilizational work that has happened. That was the crime they committed. That was the biasness that happened. So when they come, they said that even pre-modern, there was human psyche. There was a discussion on that. And there were in practice, a lot of things were existing. Like now also practice-based evidences are there. Exactly. Like in society, in culture, traditionally, there are a lot of ways of healing human. Why a particular mindset should be only addressing those issues? That is a very fundamental question that these decolonial whole movement starts to question them. And that's when the Malik Badri and the IOK movement, Ismail al-Faruqi and Naqib al-Attas of Malaysia, they started institutions to train different researchers to come up with more studies based on very holistic paradigm, which considered East, West, intuition, reason, and emotions. All of the paradigms needs to be considered while we are studying human or society in any of the ways. So that's when the movement, you can say, started. And that is when the first book of Malik Badri, Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists, come in 1970s.
The paper.
Okay,
the why, what, and how Islamic psychology, and the book.
Then the book came. Yes. So he started to critique the very fundamentals of that, and then in the same book he provided a blueprint of how we need to go ahead with this new paradigm.
And the beautiful metaphor that he gave was a lizard's hole. Like inch by inch, cubit by cubit, you will enter the lizard's hole until you will just assimilate. So the hadith, the very famous hadith of Prophet ﷺ saying that, you will keep following until you fall into the lizard's hole. So the entire idea came with that, the paper developed around that idea, and the book developed around the paper, and field grew. And from there we saw that there was a lot of critique that came in. So I think the introduction of the book itself, the other day we were doing with interns also, we covered how he said that Muslims have become more Western than the Westerners themselves. Right? And I think that was something that we actually did see when we were at Kerala also. There were a lot of Arab clients who had come for certain rehabilitation and everything, and you actually do see that it's become like that now. The capitalistic and consumer mindset has reached even the farthest of lands, right? So that's exactly what the hadith also says, the prediction, right? So this entire movement for him to pick, and the entire critique that came in, and how the movement grew, it's a legacy in itself. And I think for us to be sitting here and talking about it, and the fathers of lands, and how this entire thing has been growing, I think also in terms of social sciences, I think this is far most successful, because I think
previous movement was on Islamic
economics.
That happened because against riba or insurance based whole capitalist idea. So here, that was the fundamental critique that they had there. In psychology, the fundamental critique to Western paradigm is the soulless human conception.
Yeah.
The Western paradigm has conceptualized a human being without any ruh, any soul. And on this perspective, all the Eastern tradition, let it be Hinduism, let it be Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, or any Eastern perspective, from the beginning they had this knowledge and this understanding that human can't be conceptualized without a atma, without a soul, without a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So this conception, so how come that became the question? How come there are very few atheists? The theists are more. How come then the conception of atheistic and secularized understanding of human self get that much dominant?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Foucault becomes relevant, where he talks about the knowledge and power can't be separated. So it was the power, it was the capitalist or imperialist power that pushed those ideas in universities. Until now, we have been, in a way, colonized by our mind. Our minds are being colonized. So that decolonial, we have to exorcise that colonial mindset itself. And that is very core to the assumption of human self.
Right.
So when did it come to the subcontinent then?
Basically, if you have to track the whole discussion on these topics,
roughly,
yeah. So it has been there previously, because when it came with this critique, it came around in 2000 and 2010 and 14.
Okay.
But previously the critique was there, like Ahmad Sirhindi in his time has done. Shah Waliullah was, we can say, the one who already foreseen this coming, and he started giving the whole idea of human self. And then Ashraf Ali Thanvi and others worked on his thought. Then here in Indian context, CSR, Center for Study and Research in New Delhi, they initiated, so they are one of the pioneers in Islamization of knowledge as well. And then they formed this chapter of ISIP, Indian Council of Islamic Perspective in Psychology. They have the ISIP was formed, and then in Aligarh Muslim University they had 2-3 conferences, international conferences as well. And then the idea came towards, now the theorization is there. Now we need to move towards the application of Islamic psychology.
So as of now, it has not been applicable in any of the states or any of the countries to start with? India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka?
You're talking about Southern East Asia?
Application.
Asia.
Global application. So global application started, so there are 5 trends that has been in 2016. Ambar Haq and Human Keshavarzi published a paper of all the researches and works that has been happening, and they have given the 5 trends. So the first trend is focusing more on that to integrate, which we call as top-down approach. And then the second is they said that the theorization of personality was the second trend that was happening. The third was psychotherapy. Work on psychotherapy was the third. They found that a lot of work has been happening on psychotherapy. Then psychometrics, developing scales and you can say tests to understand human phenomena. And I'm missing on the fifth.
I think research is also
research. Yeah. So basically researching this whole paradigm from Islamic perspective was all these trends was that they have discussed. So with this, they have started some institutes and some centers, like Khalil Center is one. They have their own in Chicago, and then they are moved to Turkey. They are teaching their courses. Then CMC is the another, Cambridge Muslim College. They are doing their work. In Indonesia, Dr. Bagus and their team is there. In Malaysia, they are also working. So around the globe, then the application part, theorization and application were working a bit more distance, and then they grew more closer.
See the recent book that came about, I think last year, 2024, right? The application book. This is which is like, I think after Dr. Abdullah Rothman's book, the second book that I think they have brought about all the popular. I think they've brought about Tazkiyah Therapy of Dr. Bagus. They've also had a chapter completely focusing on how TIP sees it. I think it has Names of Allah. So I think the entire discourse is now coming together so that they can see. I think Professor Ghulam Hussain Rasool has been working a lot on how you understand the field from Quran and Sunnah perspective. Primarily from the Quran in itself, what the Quran is talking about, how you're seeing the human being, what are some of the ayahs that actually relates to some of the conditions, or even the entire conceptualization of Ruqya science. of how you're fighting against forces you cannot see, like that of evil and shaitan and all of that, right? Which again is quite a reality. Sometimes, in the name of science, we shun and run away from these things. But I remember when we were at London Museum and we were just trying to explore the spiritual section, each and every religion and across time, these are all, understanding the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the opposites have always existed together. So you will see that it's not just like in, like, exorcism is a concept only in, say, Christianity, or like, Ruqya sciences and, like, all of that, or say even in Hinduism at the end, it's there across cultures. So it's just that you've not really, in the name of, like he said, atheism and theism, like that being the, dominant force, how did the entire field get understood from something which was so fringe, so small to begin with, right? So that's where it's
So just so there is, in Islamic psychology movement itself globally, also there are not, it is not a monolithic thing, like Ghulam Hussain Rasool or Humayun Keshavarzi, Ambar Haq. These all are coming from Islamic tradition. They have their understanding of Quran and Sunnah in traditional literature. They will be having that. The differences is there, but the fundamental point is how Islam sees human is common in all of them. So that is there. So having even differences, it is in a way, it is contributing and providing the variety to the whole field. So when we come to the Indian context itself, so there is not a very monolithic understanding in India as well. And more than monolithic, even in application, there will be differences, and there will be different schools and different ways of perceiving the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that is it, how it reached India. So from where it started.
So as of now, is there any institute or a hospital who has kind of embraced it, and you have kind of started? Because as far as my information is concerned, I think this hospital you have started one. It's kind of a Tehreek, yeah. So how far have you reached in achieving the goal? Are you kind of standing on the same foundational, the kind of you had some covenants that you are standing on still, or you are kind of gone off-road, you feel?
I think it's like the four different things. So when we were, so of course, there's no doubt that this is the first hospital in India officially that has a complete department of Islamic psychology, and it is seeing clients from an Islamic psychology perspective, right? And of course, there is top-down approach, there's bottom-up approach. Even if you see the field in itself, how Dr. Malik Badri says, there is infatuation, reconciliation, and emancipation. So some of the themes, as he will elaborate, inshallah, where we have reached emancipation, we have reached conceptualizing the entire thing from a very bottom-up place. There are places, there are certain themes that we are still, right there at, maybe infatuation, and there are certain places that we are at reconciliating, right? So this is one thing. Second thing is, when we were conceptualizing the entire thing 2 years back, and I think it's been a very fulfilling and humbling and a very grateful journey for the field, for both of us, for each and every client that we saw from that perspective. What we learned, what we gave, and everything is by the mercy of Allah. And a lot of thanks and a lot of gratitude goes to him, and of course to the hospital as well, to give us a place and an arena to believe in the idea, integrate, and also give us the right place to be able to practice it in that capacity. When we were conceptualizing this 2 years back, I remember we thought that there has to be 4 facets or 4 sub-verticals that this entire department should have. So we saw research being one of it. We saw psychoeducation being one of it. We saw psychotherapy from an Islamic perspective, be it reconciliation or emancipation phases. And we also saw research, psychotherapy, training and internships, right? So I think in each of the sub-verticals, there has been good progress. Of course, we need a lot of, I feel no field can grow without patrons. No field can grow without early support in terms of human resources, in terms of patrons, in terms of people who come forward and put their time, their wealth, their health, and everything for it to grow. There is some sort of a sacrifice that needs to be given. So a lot of people came in as interns, a lot of people took the knowledge, a lot of people did go from here. We had students from Jamia, we had from like Aligarh, we had people from Kerala, like pan India. We saw a lot of people coming in. Right now also we have like a good bunch of 6-7 interns here, and I think we have slowly but surely made progress in each of it. I think there are some few papers also that did get published, one in Turkey, in women's perspective. There are quite a few that will come about, inshallah, now that we have a researcher as well. So, and psychotherapy, of course, a lot of conceptualization and understanding that has come. All of that needs to be documented for sure. That all of that needs to be produced and put into format, because I think that's understanding, and that insights that has come has to be now translated into papers. Because I think combined, both of us, we have seen, I think, more than 5,000 hours for sure would have been crossed. So that's the thing. So we did conceptualize all these 4 things, and I think we have seen progress in all of these 4 things, but it takes a lot. Of course, it takes a lot. It's not a work of 2 people to maybe head the entire movement and have the entire sense of responsibility in India. And I think what also happens is psychoeducation, right? When we talk about psychoeducation in Islamic psychology, you have to develop a complete different language for each set of people that you're going to be meeting. Like if you're meeting scholars, then the language has to be so Quranic and Arabic and classical terminologies that they understand. If you're meeting lay people, you have to be able to break what it is in very layman's term, without any jargons. If you're meeting academicians, and it has to be so much from research perspective. So each of that requires different set of resource people, different set of people with different expertise, right? So of course we need a lot of collaborations, we need a lot of support, we need a lot of people who come forward to offer anything. And that's exactly how when Dr. Malik Badri, he had a first line of supporters in the form of our beautiful teachers like Dr. Rania Awad and Dr. Abdullah and all of them. And alhamdulillah, now you see that second line. So after him, the work hasn't stopped. It just manifesting and multiplying, and it's beautifully growing, right? So that's the kind of work that even we envisioned. Of course, I think Shujauddin can add what he has.
So basically, the journey, how it has started at the hospital. So the first vision or mission that we had in the initial phase was that how much bottom up here we means directly from Quran and Sunnah and from traditional knowledge, we can integrate that, keeping that understanding of human self into application. So the idea was to develop of a mental health lab where we can have practice and we can develop this whole conception, seeing cases by cases. So the first will be to how the pathology looks differently. So how DSM, ICD, or the existing symptom-based approach of Western perspective, how at what level. So Islam has its own way or pathology, seeing at the pathology in the very basis itself. And then it moves on to the intervention modalities, how the modalities should also be having a very you can say bottom up sense to it. So when we use bottom up, it is directly from these sources, and when we use top down, it is when we say that these models that are already existing, those are evidence based from the Western perspective. So how that could be integrated with keeping this paradigm alive. So how the correlation can happen. So these were and infatuation is when these perspective is being taken and Quran and Sunnah is just put onto it as a label. So we need to be aware when we are getting into infatuation. It seems to be top down, but there is a very thin line that needs to be understood. That it will happen that we will be practicing mostly from evidence base of CBT, DBT, or compassion focus, or any of them. Our experiences are in a way very much in tune with those perspectives. And it can happen that could be the primary base. And then Quran and Sunnah could be used as, you can say, as the reference that, okay, Quran and Sunnah also have these references there. So this is infatuation. Still, that is infatuation. Then comes top down, where you are aware of the Islamic fundamental principle of Quran and Sunnah. Your conception of human is very clear. And from that perspective, you are taking, okay, there are correlation there. What Malik Badri did in Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists, he mentioned that, okay, on these fronts, with Freud, we have differences. But on these, we have, because so the base was Quran and Sunnah itself, that the understanding was this. And from this, the Freud or the Skinner or others were making a bit sense. Carl Jung and different theories that are there. So this is what top-down looks like. So even in practice also, so he critiqued the practice as well. that we say that people used to come like how the medicine, if medicine is giving, it will have similar impact on whether it is coming from any other background. How the application you are seeing, it is as neutral as medicine, like CBT, DBT, or behavior therapy for his time. He critiqued, no, it is not like that. Even the application has the whole theorization at the background. Application are not coming in just a vacuum, they are coming from a particular perspective itself. So that's when he gave the alternative of tafakkur as a modality, as a psycho-spiritual contemplation. That was one of the modality that he has initiated. That the idea, the whole process, the mechanism, the application, all is embedded into the idea and worldview of Quran and Sunnah. So you see that is the emancipation state. So from there, even the pathology will be seen differently. From there, that perspective, even the intervention will come and the outcome will also be seen differently. So that is the ultimate goal, where what we have envisioned and what we have started. But what I see during the whole phase, and I will be having a difference there, that there is still that we sometimes get caught up into sometimes infatuation. Sometimes we are just reconciling. But the real work, to have that time, to have that space to process that, okay, our understanding is again getting impacted. Because at the same time, we are seeing clients, at the same time, we have to study, we have to understand those perspectives as well. If you are not able to really implement those understanding, then I think this is the challenge. That anything that is coming from us has to be also be scrutinized. We can't say that what we are bringing is completely Islamic psychology. Because in our practice as well, being more as objective as I can be of my practice and she can be, I can see that there are themes we are working. We have brought the whole ruqya paradigm, and then the tafakkur paradigm and the modality, and then muraqaba, and then tadabbur, Quran and Sunnah, having contemplation. So these all terminologies are embedded there, and the idea is also embedded there. And even the view of, you can say, pathology, that health and pathology, that is also one of the area that we need to look. And then developing psychometric tests based on these constructs. Till now, we were not able to push in that area. So all the psychologists who wants to work towards it, these are some possible areas that they can look into.
Yeah, they can look into.
Still now we are using MCMI, IPD, or the existing paradigm of pathology. How this paradigm could be used, could be developed. This is something that requires efforts, and this requires a lot of work.
And years, in fact, years. If we see how Khalil Center has been working on standardizing the TIIV, the traditional Islamic inventory of virtues, it's years. It's not something. And alhamdulillah, I think the funds and the resources and everything that's required, right? So this field, there is a space for each and every one, I feel. Like the ones who are coming from research background, you will have a space. You'll have a lot of work to do. If you're coming in with an understanding of I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. There's a lot of mental health activism kind of a work. WHO has given the mandate that any country which is overpopulated, like that of India, Brazil, and all of these countries, where there's a lot of population, and of course the trained professionals are very few, like 0.75 to every 1 lakh. There's a lot of work of mental health activists who can take up that kind of work. So if in Islamic psychology, applying the same model, we will need a lot of people who can just take the models down to the grassroots, right? If they feel that there's something that they cannot, then they can bring it up and escalate. And they can actually bring it up to the people who really might have a little bit more deeper understanding. So there is a room and space and, work that needs to be done. There's a lot. It just requires a little bit of that time and sacrifice in your resources, and whatever strengths or salahiyat, whatever strengths Allah has gifted you, you bring that with all your intention and niyyah, and there is definitely space. So like he said, there's no doubt we are at quite a few places. It might be infatuation, quite a few places reconciliation, and like a lot of theorization and understanding has come from emancipation, a lot of different modalities that have been introduced. But finding the right platform, space, arena to be able to practice it the way. Now, if you see how Dr. Rothman practices, it's a very, compassion, focus, spiritual inquiry basis at the way he does. It's a lot of mirror work. There's a lot of salah that you read before you enter. There's a lot of du'as and, lot of very spiritually. But whereas when you compare that to Western way of doing therapeutic, it's very on the go. Right? There's no sense of staying. There's a lot of focus on knowing various modalities. There's a lot of focus on knowledge acquisition, and there's a lot of focus on knowing how many assessments you really know. Not saying it's not important, diagnosis and understanding. Like even if there's a person who's coming with some marais we should know which problem, what is he really fixated at, or what is he really struggling with? Is it the nafsi things? Is it ihsasi? Like which area or what character virtue or vice he's struggling with? Diagnosis is definitely important, but like you're saying, the entire paradigm from which we're seeing is very different. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's not like, alhamdulillah, the department came about, it's established, it's definitely it has gone forward, done a lot of beautiful, like we did introduction in the south of Islamic psychology that happened here in Bangalore. We had Navid Iqbal Saab had come down. We had the SSA conference that happened. We try to understand the entire gender identity from an Islamic perspective as to how do we help people coming in from those areas, or like from those MERS or those diseases, right? Or illnesses, let's call it, right? So how do you conceptualize all of these things? How do you help? How do you? So a lot of good things. I think the entire introduction of TIAP, like Khalil Center collaborations, and it happened at various hospitals. It happened at Mind and Brain. It happened at Shifa Hospital, at Umeed Hospital. So a lot of things have definitely come about. But for sure, that shouldn't make us feel complacent. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. There's still a lot to be done, and there's definitely space for every person who has intention, pure niyan intention, and whatever they can offer the field.
So what a person who is listening to us or want to understand that what could be the way ahead or forward when we see this whole journey and where we are now. So the first and foremost, what I am finding is lacking in us and in the field, in Indian context itself. So the primary thing I think is the relation, with the fundamental relation with the Wahi, with Quran and Sunnah and tradition. How you are approaching it, very first-hand approach. Developing your competency and having the tazkiyah for your own self. Even the traditional systems that are there in place, the essence of the traditional system, like if I am a Raqi or I'm getting trained in Ruqya, so they have their own diagnosis and way of understanding reality. So not being dismissive to that, being more incorporative to that. Similarly, the Khanqahs and Sufis, or you can say the chains and Silsilas, Naqshbandi and all of it, they have their own framework of understanding. So ability to understand that paradigm with the existing, you can say, mental health paradigm that is there, and coming up with your own theorization. So having that niya, that maqsad there, that I want to have a very deep understanding of human being, then having the reflections of Quran and Sunnah again and again on. For example, if I take personality disorders, so personality disorders, just one disorder, how it has been conceptualized, the cases that what we are seeing of borderline, of OCPD or other personality disorders, or even for gender identity, how that conceptualization, that's something, that phenomena which I am experiencing, then my understanding of that. So we can't even borrow TIAP or SMC or any other. We have to be there, or any other scholars, just we can't take it as it is. Because even there also we need to work in theorization, and that is something which will be a very original work that will be coming, and that is our goal. That here at the hospital, we want to train ourselves, having the traditional background, working towards it, at the same time knowing the existing paradigm, but our fundamental core won't be getting influenced by the Western paradigm. That is the crux of it, and that is the most difficult thing, because we have been trained in Western paradigm till our post-graduation and all of that. So there are multiple times that our experiences, we will be thinking that, okay, this is something that I am doing from Islamic.
The default
nature, because we have been trained in that way.
Yeah.
But for that to have developed that metacognitive critical approach to ourselves, for that we need to be very traditional, in line with these revelation and the traditional knowledge that is there. And that requires an effort. This is something we have already been in tune, so we can understand it, we can experience it very well. And it is easy work as compared to bringing that into light and then integrating the whole process. So I think this is the challenge. So anyone who is trying to work towards it, towards the field, shouldn't expect that things could be very easy. It is a very personal journey. It will be your own personal spiritual journey that will be there. You will be impacted. You will be going through your own crisis. You need to have some supervision, and try to see those supervision should be happening from those who have Islamic perspective.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, because when you are vulnerable, This is what, even to our patients, those who are coming, they are in a vulnerable state. If we are using the experiences and the understanding from a different perspective, we are in a way making a very big claim or reshifting their whole experiences.
Right.
So in that we need to be more mukhlis, more sincere, that yes, what we are trying to communicate is from a very tawhidic, from a very that Noor from Allah is that we want to translate.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we want to translate it to them. So that process for us also, it could be sometimes in my own personal experience, I can feel that okay, yes, I'm very much Islamically doing it, but in reality, when I question the very basis, I realize no, there are still some nuanced understanding that I'm borrowing from somewhere else.
Is that okay?
For me personally, I want to disenchant myself completely from that, and that is what the emancipation looks
Is it
like.
possible?
Yes, we have to train more ourselves into this understanding of human self, and while engaging with the phenomena, with patients, caring, and then the successful treatment, this cycle has to be from the whole this paradigm, and that is the, you can say, that is the position we want to reach. Reconciliation is still till we don't have those language, we don't have that approach as of now. Still we have 4-5 modalities there, but we need to work more aggressively on that. But it is happening. That is a challenge, that is a practical challenge at hospital as well. The patients that are coming, they are the language as it is still improving, so we are using some reconciliatory, some languages that is there, so that we need to work more on.
So basically what you're trying to tell is that there are challenges as of now, but you are trying very hard to kind of reach to a conclusion wherein you can do it as the founders and the pioneers wanted it to be.
It's in the
So it's a
continuum,
long
I think,
journey.
because it's a journey within yourself also, it's a journey within the field also, within the nation also, and how the entire field is growing and the discourse is growing. I think it's a journey. It's definitely a journey, right? But yeah,
So you guys have been doing amazing job, I think with respect to marital therapy and few other spiritual concerns. So I have a lame question right now. So when, see, for example, now I'm talking to you, I can see, I can hear, then this is my physical state. So if I am dead right now, if I get on cardiac arrest, now I won't be able to talk, I won't be able to see. So basically what has gone away from me is the soul, what you guys were talking about. Now I understand this as ki this was the Amar of Allah. So I was not talking myself because my soul was being given an hukum, okay, you talk. So now the soul is invisible, right? Everybody knows in every faith it's invisible. How can you guys treat something which is invisible?
So very primarily, first we need to understand that to understand human itself, when I'm seeing you or when I'm talking to you, when I'm trying to understand you, if I'm very much focused onto your physical self itself, and I'm not acknowledging that I have more than acknowledging, if I'm not in tune with my own spiritual essence, that I am a spiritual being by birth, it is not someone has to tell me. This question to something which is invisible and it can't be understood, these are two different things. It is invisible, but there is a different faculty in me to understand it, to know it. With my physical senses, I can definitely, for the physical senses, it is invisible. But for my intuitive faculty, that is already there in me. The Quran talks about Sama, Basar, and Afida. These are the sources of knowledge that every human has. So that fundamental sources of knowledge is what we are trying to first work on. That you as a human already has, so Basar is observation, physical, that observation is there. Through a lot of tests I can have that. And then I have Sama through the revelation of the different peoples that has communicated to me, their experiences, their spiritual experiences. And then there is a very intuitive alignment with my spiritual self. So the patients that are coming to us, they will already be having that essence that I know what my spiritual sense is. That is a very fundamental base for them. It is a very, you can say, the ontological thing. Ontology means that it is a existence. It exists in me.
The essence
is already there.
Yeah.
So for proving or disproving it, that whether it is existing or whether it is not existing, that answer will be resolved by the different faculty. As a human, I have that intuitive faculty to be there. If someone is coming and if it's telling me I have these experiences, I can say, okay, it is due to hallucination or is it really a spiritual experiences? Because that intuitive essence that is there, that needs to be revived again. So as a human, that intuitive experience, what the different Vijdan is there, Ilham is there, Ilqa is there, that is already there in us. So how much are we in tune with that essence? Then only we will be, the other person will be able to really relate with what we are. So many of the clients that are coming, they're coming from different faith, but still they are in tune with their natural state. So when we will be talking, they will be knowing, yeah, what you're talking makes sense.
And I think, as how scholars also say, right, we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So that's exactly what all the teachers in the field say. So the concept is to not be in ghafla. We are living such a hedonistic, materialistic, capitalistic, and all the ist lives that we forget that we are a spiritual being. Like the other day, I think there was, a Danish Seth, right? Everybody knows him and the kind of very relevant content that he makes. He was like, and it actually, like, some of the memes that he makes is very relevant. He said, everything just feels so repetitive. Everybody's having the same kind of phones. Everybody's going to the same kind of places. Nothing seems different anymore, right? We're all chasing a very similar kind of a lifestyle, a similar vicious cycle, right? We're all chasing six-pack, that six-figure salaries and six-pack abs, and everything just seems so, trivial, and something which is so repetitive and mundane. And that's exactly why a lot of clients who come to us are also coming with what we call as existential crisis, meaning crisis. Why do I exist? So there's an entire thought of line and chain, and we're actually conceptualizing this. An entire identity crisis was definitely there. But now you have meaning crisis. Why do I exist? Why do I live? Why am I even there, And that happens when you live a lot in ghafla. Heedless lives, right? Like you're just chasing what has been chased. It's like the Pied Piper just blowing the pipe and all the rats is running behind. That's a very beautiful metaphor that you have for the kind of life that we're living. When you start living a more centered, anchored, and in tune to the essence kind of a life, that question will not exist. Because you will be able to recognize a person with their essence. You'll be able to see beyond the senses. I know now this may start sounding like paranormal psychology, but we are forgetting that we are spiritual beings.
In psychology as well, I want to add on that existential psychology, humanistic psychology, and psychology of Jung, there is in different perspective as well, there is an acknowledgement of a neurological or metaphysical dimension of human self.
Yes.
So it's not just Islamic or just religious based psychology, spiritual religious based psychology, but even in the Western paradigm of human self, there have been a lot of theorists who has this understanding of human self.
Yeah, that's true.
So that is where the whole similarities then, so that's why we find ourselves closer to them in terms of conceptualization of human being, and then we are pretty much to some extent linear in adopting their modalities because they have the conception of spirit and ruh and that dynamics.
Even dream analysis, right? Because one of the things that I feel that we have done some progress, if not for a lot, is how we conceptualize the MSE in itself. Of course, we are retaining the affect, the appearance, the grimace, and all of that, whatever it had. But we are also adding a few things like dreams, the prenatal environment that you have, right? I got a chance to meet Anna. She's a birth psychologist, very renowned TED speaker, birth psychologist, and she talks about how there's an entire psychology of your birth, right? The prenatal, and we do see, and it's Islamically proven that when you're listening to a lot of Quran and all of that, your child does grow with a lot of that. That those skills are really required, that lot of this patience and grit and resilience kind of and the child recognizes. We know there's a prenatal reality, because as soon as the child listens to the mother's voice, how does it come down when the child listens to the father's voice? Because that's a voice that the child has heard, right? So there is a prenatal, yeah. So these are things that, so that's why so the MSE in itself has these kind of additions to the already existing. And eventually, inshallah, hopefully, we try to see that whatever we needs to be taken from the MSE we take. Otherwise, we have a complete bottom-up way in which we even understand what we're actually seeing as a first understanding of the mental status examination when the client walks in. Inshallah.
One more acknowledgement from my side. I'll repeat myself. One more acknowledgement from my side that you guys have done a wonderful job with gender. So for that, I think we are planning to have a. I think it's gonna be lengthy, so we will try to do it as soon as possible. So it's gonna be some 45 minutes to 1 hour podcast, because gender is very sensitive and it's a delicate silver lining, wherein I think we might get into things wherein we don't agree with each other.
It is very controversial.
Yeah, it is very controversial. So I think from my side, I am very convinced now what you guys are doing. See, for the help of, for the benefit of the audience, I think some of the statements we made would not be making any sense, but then for that, they will have to kind of dig down a little deeper. And I mean, the language we have been talking, maybe it is making some sense to the relevant field guys, but no offense, like to some people, it might not be
relevant.
yeah,
And it's a
yeah.
general disclaimer as well.
Those
Like,
who are
yeah.
watching us, if they want to understand deeper, so at the hospital we have this facility to even discuss these matters.
Great.
Yeah. So you can come at the hospital.
And we can have a
We can
discussion.
have a
Yeah.
discussion. We can have a-
Psychoeducation is about helping people understand what this field is about.
Mhm.
And like we said, there are different areas that you actually mark, right? Anybody who wants to understand this, they're more than happy to just walk in, and we'll be more than happy to take them through the journey of what this entire thing feels like.
They'll have to do prior booking before they meet. Okay, so it was a very good discussion. I'm so happy that we could actually make it. I think we were planning to do this from a long time.
Right.
So it's all thanks to our digital team also, and that is it. So
Yes.
I wish you all the good luck.
Thank you so much.
It's extremely amazing what you guys are doing. So thank you so much, audience. Bye bye. Take care. The soul is invisible, right? Everybody knows in every faith it's invisible. How can you guys treat something which is invisible?